Welcome to the Next Class 2.0 with host Rob Birdsell, Kent Hickey, and Erin Barisano. Join us as we discuss the latest trends and innovations shaping education.
Hello and welcome to the Next Class. I'm Rob Birdsell, your co-host, joined by my friend Erin Barisano. Erin, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good, Rob. It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you. And for our listeners, this is a bit of a different podcast. The subject we're going to be talking about today, the national school choice legislation, is so timely that we're actually not editing this. We're going to drop this live on Tuesday. Not live, it'll be recorded, obviously, but we will be recording this today, Friday, May 23rd, and we want to get this to you right away. So right after the Memorial Day holiday, we will be dropping this. So this is unedited and coming to you straight from Washington, D.C. Erin, I'll allow you to introduce our guest.
Yeah, we're super excited, and as Rob said, the timeliness of this topic and our guest. So we're so happy to have Ashling Kelly Preston join us today. And Ashling is the Associate Director of Government Relations at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and have the pleasure of working alongside Ashling on a committee for Catholic school educational policy. We were together, about a month ago in DC, and we're going to talk about school choice. So Ashling, welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Erin and Rob. Really exciting to be here. And it really is just the end of a really crucial week.
And for our listeners, we actually recorded this a week ago, and things have changed so much that Ashley said she would do a second podcast. So we're coming to you with really, really timely information. And Ashley, just for our listeners, could you give a brief background of your role and who you work for, and before we get into the bill?
Sure. Well, I, as Erin mentioned, am the Associate Director for Government Relations at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And in this role, I advance the bishops' advocacy agenda on Capitol Hill in the areas primarily of Catholic education in the context of this bill, but also in a handful of other domestic policy issues. And one of the main priorities this year for our bishops in the space of education is the Educational Choice for Children Act, which is an opportunity that Congress has to pass federal school choice legislation this year. So it's a really exciting time to be with the bishops. And, I think that we've got some exciting work ahead.
So it's been a busy week for you, Ashling, and thank you for all of your good work and support of our Catholic schools as it relates to public policy. Can you share a little bit about this bill, and maybe a little bit of background as to what has gotten us to this place today, and what do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, so it's important to say that with the ECCA, this has been something that's 3 years in the making. So the beauty of the ECCA and the coalition and the partners we've built is that we've really come together to work as part of this bill and built up all of this strong energy behind it. And we're just really pleased to see that it was included in the budget reconciliation package, which passed the House of Representatives yesterday morning at 6:30 a.m. by one vote, and then is now headed over to the Senate, where we're going to see what changes they make to it. But, it's just such an incredible moment. I actually had a minute yesterday where I paused and I thought to myself, wow, today is Thursday, May 22nd, and Congress just passed federal school choice legislation for the first time ever.
It gives me chills when you just take a pause and yeah.
That's shocking. That is shocking. And that is something that is really we should just take a step back and just appreciate the moment we're in and the incredible work that so many people have done. And so, we're going to get into the particulars of some changes that need to be made and progress we need to continue to make. But I think it's important to level set and say, that's where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great comment, Ashley, that this is momentous. I mean, this, for our listeners, this is the first time in our nation's history that we have passed national school choice. And Ashley, could you walk our listeners through what this is. What is the bill, and how does it affect Catholic schools?
Okay, so I actually want to zoom out a little bit and first talk about the Educational Choice for Children Act that was introduced at the beginning of the 119th Congress. So that was the version of the bill that was introduced originally that USCCB and all of the coalition members have promoted, endorsed, and supported over the past couple of
Mhm.
years. So some of those top line points, first of all, that bill was a $10 billion annual 100%
Okay.
federal tax credit for contributions to an eligible scholarship granting organization or SGO. Under that piece of legislation, both corporate and individual givers were eligible to participate. And this was really a crucial aspect because allowing corporate givers to participate made it much more likely that you would be able to fill a $10 billion bucket of funds. Next, the bill had a 10-year runway, which was meaningful
Mm.
because it's important for schools to have a sense of stability around these types of programs so they can appropriately financially plan. The legislation set student eligibility at 300% of the regional median family income. So experts estimated that that would cover between 85 and 90% of children in the United States. So this was not universal school choice, but it was the vast majority of children in the United States. And it also included really robust protections for religious liberty, parental autonomy, and expressly prevents state interference into both SGOs and schools so that no government actor can ever have control of our school in any way. So, those were the provisions that were designed in the ECCA. And well, as I said, they included a version of this in reconciliation, but they made some changes to it that we really feel need to be addressed before we move forward in the Senate. And we're really optimistic that we have the opportunity to do
Okay.
that.
And can you talk about what next steps are and what the process looks like in timing?
Yeah. We are still, I think things are still changing by the hour. Congress is scheduled to go into recess next week for the Memorial Day holiday. So while lawmakers will not be actually on the Hill, we expect a lot of the negotiations to start taking place in key offices, but we're still kind of trying to figure out what is going to take place. And I think what we are really focused on is making sure we're communicating how important it is to uplift robust school choice in the federal reconciliation package that's going to come out of the Senate, and we're optimistic that we can do that.
And so, Ashling, what would I mean, really, the impact be on states like California, like Illinois, Michigan, that don't currently have a state school choice programs?
Yeah, absolutely. It benefits them. It brings school choice to those children. And it also adds to the things that state level programs are already doing. So if you're in a state with robust school choice, you're able to benefit from this as well. So if you receive an ESA under Arizona's ESA
Mhm.
program, you can
Yeah.
stack an ECCA scholarship on top of that. But yes, millions, or there are varying estimates, but hundreds of thousands of children will be able to benefit in states where there are currently no school choice options, and that's a big deal.
Right, right. And I think one of the and I do think it's an important point to point out to our listeners. Maybe you could speak to it, that this is a parental school choice bill, meaning it's focusing on the needs of the child and at parents' discretion. And so, public school students also have access to that. Correct?
Absolutely. And that was actually a very intentionally designed version of the bill. And I also want to zoom out and say that when the ECCA was written, we didn't make this up from scratch. Like, the bill
Mhm.
authors did not make this up out of whole cloth. What the bill writers did is they looked towards the very successful programs at the state level, and like those in Arizona and those in
Right.
Florida, and learned from them. And they adapted some of their best practices and wrote them into this bill. But then they also used examples that we learned from successful ESA models, where they added in the flexibility of allowable uses of an ESA. So the goal was to combine the best of both worlds into this bill. And yeah, that was the goal for them to do that.
And so, Ashley, how do parents access these funds? what does the design look like for that? Or is the school accessing it, or the parents, and how does that look?
Yeah. So the main thing that this bill legislates is related to SGOs and the allowability of charitable contributions to SGOs. You can receive a tax credit for that. So the way a parent would get a scholarship for their child to attend a private school or to get some tutoring or whatever, one of the very flexible array of allowable uses is they would go apply directly to their SGO. And, parents, and I've heard of this in other states where they have had scholarship tax credit programs for a while, that parents can become very savvy at understanding how to navigate different SGOs and which SGOs are going to serve their children the best, which ones manage funds most responsibly. And so, these are definitely really important things that I think people are considering.
And just for our listeners, an SGO is a scholarship granting organization. Here in Chicago, we have Empower Illinois, which was the SGO that ran our tax credit for a few years here. So a parent would apply to one of these scholarship granting organizations for a scholarship. The SGO then, how do they evaluate the worthiness of the applicant for a scholarship?
Yeah. So the criteria is pretty flexible. They have to be under that 300% of regional median income by family. And there's a handful of other requirements, but basically the goal was to provide very light touch regulations as it related to
Okay.
how they actually had to administer the scholarship. So they can set certain additional parameters that they want to in an SGO. So, and if an SGO wanted to say, okay, we will serve up to 300% of area median income, but we're going to serve the lowest income families who apply first. That's called a means preference. They can do that. If they say we only want to serve registered parishioners in the Archdiocese of Washington, they could do that. And if they wanted to give preference towards siblings or things like that, they can set those additional parameters. And it was very important to do that because we wanted to make sure that we recognize that I'm sure what would work best in Chicago is not what's going to work best in Orange County and is not going to work best in Washington and wherever else. So we wanted to really give maximum flexibility to the SGOs.
So, Erin, last time we talked about the California conference,
Right.
talking about do you think you will have a statewide SGO?
Right. And so that's kind of, I mean, that is the question, Rob. And we're right now working alongside our bishops, making recommendations to them. We have a variety of dioceses here in California. Some are small, some are large, with the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, the largest archdiocese. And then we have some kind of mid-size. And so we're really, right now, we're talking to lots of people. I'll be honest. Do we want to go with a statewide SGO, a national SGO? Do we want to, maybe divide our state, do two SGOs? It is been clear to us, though, we want one that is explicitly Catholic. And so we're talking to, Catholic funders and things like that to serve our Catholic families here in California. But it's that's a whole new learning curve for us in California, and I suspect in other states that really have been so far away from school choice that we really have to learn a lot very quickly.
And so, Ashley, if a family meets a criterion of an SGO, they apply. Does the money then flow from the SGO to the family or to the school?
I think that'll depend on what the purpose or what the use of the funds is. So I can imagine and I think there's certain programs that do this where the SGO can pay the tuition straight to the school, like straight into the school's bank account. So that could be something that an SGO would want to leverage. But maybe in the situation of the parent is pursuing private tutoring for their child, and there's provisions for that in the bill, maybe it does make more sense to do some sort of direct payment to the parent or a reimbursement, or it would be but it's up to the SGO to kind of figure out what would work best.
Interesting. And I know that historically rural communities have, even conservative Republican rural communities have pushed back against school choice. How were you able to win over some of those key congressional leaders?
Yeah, that was actually a conversation we had. And I think it goes back to the fundamental design of this bill is that children in every single educational setting win. And, if this was just, and some opponents will talk about, oh, a private school bill, private school. But the reality is, children in every single educational setting can benefit. So that means if you are a homeschooling family that wants to use an ECCA scholarship for homeschooling resources, you can do that. If you are a public school student, you can receive additional special needs therapies, resources, supports through ECCA as well. So, when we've talked to, as you've mentioned, some of these more rural members who say, look, I get the principle behind it, but how does this benefit me when we don't have a single private school
Yeah.
in our entire district? We say, well, here's the beauty of it. A bunch of kids in your public school district can benefit too.
And what we talked about last time that is really interesting is someone in a rural community that only has public schools could use this money to take an online theology course.
Right.
So their children may not have access to Catholic education, but now they do.
Yeah, as long as it's from an accredited, appropriate, source, yes, that's completely allowable. And I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about school choice. We're talking about the ability for a family to truly choose the setting that they're in. And if it's the public school, that is great. But maybe they want some enrichment in the form of resources that only exist outside of the school, but money is an obstacle. And so I think that's a very successful argument we've been able to make with a lot of members who say, we just don't have a lot of private schools here.
So looking at timeline, we know that it just passed Congress yesterday as part of that tax package. What does it look like moving forward? Not only for passing at Senate, but also implementation of this.
Yeah. So I think the timing in the Senate is a little bit unclear. I think the picture will be a lot more clear after next week.
Okay.
But I think that the sense is that they're going to want to move quickly in the Senate,
Okay.
similarly to how they did in the House. Maybe it won't be quite as quick,
Hmm.
but my sense is that they would like to be done soon. And so I am telling people, and this is like a staggering thing to think about if you've been working on this for a while, as I know you have,
Hmm.
to really talk about, we could have a school choice law by the summer.
Wow.
That's
Oh my.
true. That could absolutely happen. A lot of people, and these are self-imposed deadlines, they can
Uh-huh.
slip, but people are talking about the 4th of July as a
Okay.
day, as a key date. I'm not going to make any predictions, but
Sure.
the sense is that the Senate feels, I think, that they would like to move quickly as well.
Okay. Okay. And then this would be effective for the 26-27 school year. Is that correct?
Right. Right.
Okay.
So there would be a process after the bill passed where it goes into a rulemaking
Okay.
dynamic with the Treasury Department, where they set additional parameters to make it workable, like some of the not like statutory changes, but technical tweaks to make certain things more feasible. And if that passes, the coalition is certainly going to be very active in making sure that they understand our needs and our concerns as a key constituent, given that roughly 75% of private schools are religious schools. So it's very important that they
Right.
understand our perspective. So that's going to be the process. And then there's going to be a period of time where SGOs are able to get certified, start collecting funds
Got it.
before it actually goes into effect. And so that's why, and Rob, you mentioned this earlier, that's why it's so important that that the Senate really considers issues around the runway of the program, and the 10-year length of the program is very crucial.
Yeah, that it's great to hear you talk about a 10-year because that is transformative. If it's 4 years, I get very concerned that people
Yeah.
get used to it and then it goes away. And if it is a shortened bill, as we saw here in Illinois, I think it's important that people not put it into their operating budget, but
Yeah.
use it for deferred maintenance, for an endowment, for that don't get used to it. But a 10-year bill is totally different. I mean, So that's great to hear. Now, not to get things totally complicated, but there is a second bill. Senator Cruz has introduced a second bill. Can you comment on what it is and how they're going to work together? What uh, what does that mean?
Yeah, I do want to comment on that, but I want to very quickly go back to the piece around the runway and one of the reasons why that's so important, because I think we cannot emphasize this enough. What that could practically look like, if we're talking about a 4-year runway, what that could practically look like is a child going through almost all the way through high school and potentially losing their scholarship
Right.
their senior year of high school. And then what happens if the
Mhm.
program is not renewed because there's not the political appetite to renew it again, because we don't know what the political landscape is
Yeah.
going to be like in 2029. And that's the reality. And, I was just speaking with some colleagues in South Carolina who talked about that they admitted students to their school, to their private school. And then the South Carolina state school choice program got held up in court. And they ended up making it work out for them. And God bless the funders who made that possible in South Carolina for those students to continue attending that school. But I mean, they can't do that forever. So that's why I want to say that the 10-year time window is so crucial, because otherwise kids get left in the lurch in addition to schools. So I just wanted to raise that up. But yeah, so there's this bill, there's this new bill. It's called the Universal School Choice Act. It was introduced by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas this Tuesday, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is a federal universal school choice bill. In terms of the way it's designed, it's designed very similar to the ECCA. It's a $10 billion scholarship tax credit. It's a 100% credit, non-refundable. Similarly to the version of ECCA that was introduced at the beginning of this Congress, it includes both corporate and individual givers as part of that. It includes those crucial religious liberty protections in the bill. The two significant differences between the Senator Cruz bill and the ECCA is, number one, the eligibility threshold, which Cruz's bill doesn't have one. It is universal, but it has a means preference. So lowest income children are prioritized to receive a scholarship first by law. And then the other main difference is the way that the credit cap is allocated among states. And I don't want to inflict all of the financial things on your listeners, but the way ECCA calculated how much each state was guaranteed is different than how Senator Cruz's bill has done that. Other than that, they're very similar.
So will they reconcile them into one bill? Will they run with Cruz's, or how does that? I mean, you've got two, or will they do both of them?
I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. And I think that that's something that we're going to be watching closely, how they're going to be a part of this package, and how they're going to work together. But what I can say about Senator Cassidy, Senator Cruz, and Senator Scott, who's also a big leader in this space, is they all really want robust, strong school choice. And we think that they are all three real champions of school choice. And so, just really appreciative of their continued leadership on this. And so, yeah, we'll see how they decide to proceed.
I have one other subject, a bit off course here, but Erin, any final thoughts or questions for Ashley on the school choice
No,
legislation?
this is so just like such an exciting time, and a lot to take in.
So we also had some other big news this week in school choice. The Oklahoma uh, charter
Right.
Catholic virtual school was not approved in a 4-4 split decision, with Justice Barrett recusing herself because of her work at Notre Dame and
Mhm.
relationships with the lawyers representing the Diocese of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Ashley, do you follow this too? Do you have any thoughts on the Supreme Court decision?
No, not I really don't. I watched the case. I found out the result like everybody else, and I think it is I think it's an interesting case, but we do have a lot of strong case law in the Supreme Court that upholds the right for private and religious schools to not be discriminated against in programs, and so I think that's positive. But I haven't really followed the St. Isidore's case too closely.
Erin, any thoughts on your end?
No, I mean, again, I agree with Ashling. I think it's interesting, and I think in this landscape, California's been a leader in charter schools for 20 plus years. Um, yeah, I'll be honest, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. It's always been while charter schools are part of the school choice movement. With that Catholic school landscape, it's just kind of an interesting one to kind of reconcile. So, but yeah, I'd say more than anything, just kind of interesting as to what could be on the horizon.
Yeah, just intellectually, it's been an interesting debate. Writers like Andy Smerrick, who is just a great writer, very supportive,
Yeah.
and then others, Catholics, very much against it, like the Attorney General in Oklahoma, who's a Republican. So it was a really interesting one to
Yeah.
follow. I do think this legislation we've been talking about is a much cleaner and better one for Catholic schools. I think there's less intrusion. I think the direct funding of Catholic schools is problematic. And so this, I
Yeah.
think, is a much better bill. I think we've got much more legal backing for this one. And so it's just interesting. They both came down in the same week.
Right. Right.
It was certainly a big week in education.
Right. But there's so much going on. You didn't really see a lot. Like you really had to dig or be following the wonky, uh, stuff that I unfortunately am very interested in.
I know, I know. And it's so funny because I'll get home and my husband is not in the political space at all. He's a civil engineer. He has nothing to do with politics. And so I'll get home and I'll say, "Did you hear about the corporate tax credit provision?" And he said, "Whoa, what are you even talking about?" And it always brings me back down to earth and reminds me, okay, let me take a step back from the
Yeah.
news for a moment and just be with my family for a while.
Yeah, yeah. That balance is super important. That
It
balance.
is. It's easy to get lost in it, but and that's the other thing I love about talking to school leaders is it helps you keep things in perspective because when you're on the Hill, you get so caught up in the minutia of the negotiations and who's up,
Sure.
who's down, do we have the votes, do we not have the votes? And then I talk to a superintendent who tells me about the types of students that school choice has brought to their schools and the resources they've been able to provide and the experiences they've been able to give and that they have been able to serve even more children with
Yeah,
disabilities and even more low income families. And you have schools out there where there is not a single seat in a Catholic school. Like you have places like that where they can't build schools fast enough, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'm not saying that school choice causes all of that, and it's not a silver bullet to fix underlying issues, but it clearly is making a meaningful difference in a lot of states. And so just reminding myself of that when I'm up on the Hill and it's midnight and I'm scrolling through some budget text that just got released or something, like why we're doing this and why does this matter to the bishops? Because it's a moral matter as it
yeah.
relates to children receiving a high quality education that is aligns with their parents' values. So that's why we care so much about this bill.
Well, Ashley, grateful for your time and such a busy week, and grateful that you reached out saying we got to redo this.
Yeah.
um, and even though this is a bit different in that we are going unedited, I am going to end as we end all of our podcasts. You now have a precursor of what the final question is. But who is was your greatest teacher and why?
Okay, yes. So I can't I don't have any excuse for the fact that I knew the question in advance and I did not prep a stronger answer. But I think I'm going to say exactly what I said last time because that's clearly where my heart was, which is my 11th grade AP English teacher, Mr. Jordan, who really encouraged just writing things out by hand. And it's I think a lost art, a dying art, just long form writing, being able to write paragraphs with your hand, with pen on paper. And that's a meaningful thing to do. And I think as we're in this digital world, I want to like wax philosophical, but like was we're in this like increase exactly the
Yep,
moleskin like
me too.
I,
I got
I've,
mine.
I've been taking notes on this podcast and of things you guys are saying that's just like firing me up. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing as I voice text, I text, I call, I email all the time. But I appreciate Mr. Jordan from my 11th grade English class, who started off every single class day by a 10-minute exercise where we just wrote for 10 minutes straight, uninterrupted, about whatever we wanted to. So it was basically like a journaling time. And it was just to build the muscle memory and to build the habit of it. And it's carried me into my adulthood. And I think it's a beautiful thing to have amidst this kind of tech focused world, as a place where I can just, pen to paper. I think it's good.
That's great. And for our listeners who aren't watching the video, we all held up our journals at the same time. That's what that laugh was there, that we were all writing during this podcast, because we all are writers. And as a former English teacher, I had that practice for many years. I had the student, I don't think we did 10 minutes. I think I did 5 minutes, but every day, some journaling. Erin, any closing thoughts?
No, just gratitude, Ashling, for your advocacy, your good work for our schools, our students, representing our bishops well, and just really your passion. It just came through so clearly in this conversation and all that you do. So thank you.
And I'd like to give a shout out to our producer, Nico, who jumped in on this quickly at turning this around without a lot of time. So Nico, always appreciate the work you do for the next class. For our listeners, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the next class, share it with family and friends. And until next time, we'll see you at the next class.
Thank you for tuning in.